In 1970, a father and his two daughters were out hiking in Bergen, Norway, when they came across something peculiar. Only after getting a closer look, the true horror of what they had stumbled upon that day would become apparent. It was a body that seemed to be lying between two large rocks. It was a woman, and whatever happened to her, she met a very grisly end. Not only did the family stumble upon something that surely gave them nightmares for the rest of their lives, but they also discovered a mystery that 52 years later, experts are still trying to find the answers to. I'm Johnny, and this is the mystery of the Isdal woman. Bergen in Norway, a mountainous region, picturesque and stunning. People flock to the 7 peaks for all manner of hiking and mountaineering. One of the main favourites of hikers to the area is Mount Ulriken, the peak of which sits at 643 metres above sea level. And like I said, people go crazy for this. Thousands of hikers climb that bad boy each year. Once at the top though, you can see why. It's clearly one of the most beautiful views in all of Norway. But like most mountain climbs, there's the easy way and then there's the more extreme, hardcore way, which would be the north-facing peak of the mountain. To be fair, it would probably be an easier climb in the summer. In the winter, well, not so much. That's why the valley is known as Isdalen. Translated, this means Ice Valley. Countless people have perished on this side of Ulriken. Many of them have chosen to take their own lives. That's why that particular section is called Isdalen, Valley of Death. Here lads, you fancy going for a hike? Aye, sure, that sounds good. Where about? Isdalen. Aye, cool, can't wait, that'll be good. Wait, what does Isdalen mean? Valley of Death? No, thanks though, we'll pass. It was in this Valley of Death on a cold, wet morning on the 29th of November in 1970 that a college professor and his two daughters were out for a wee hike. Along the trail, one of the daughters spotted something that looked out of place. It made all 3 of them stop in their tracks. Closer inspection revealed what looked like a human body. A badly charred human body. The trio immediately returned to town to fetch the police and an investigation was started. The body was ascertained to be that of an adult female. She was found laying between 2 large rocks with her arms outstretched in what's called a boxer's pose. This was due to her being badly burned. This causes the muscles to contract and is fairly common in these type of deaths. Her features and face were unrecognisable due to her injuries. She was completely burnt, and although she appeared to be naked, the police believed that this was simply because her clothes had burned off. So the only way now that police could try and identify this woman was by inspecting her belongings. This would certainly reveal more questions than answers. If you are familiar with other similar cases like the Somerton Man or the mystery man of Sligo, Peter Bergman, then you'll guess where this case is going. If you don't know these cases, then you're in luck because I've already covered them in other videos, and I'll leave a wee link to them below. You can check them out only after watching this one, mind, and, of course, subscribing to the channel. Right, so first things first, let's get a look at these items that police recovered at the scene. The charred remains of dark blue stretched trousers and a stocking on her right foot. A matching left stocking that was not on her body but was located nearby. One rubber welly boot known as sailor boots. The remains of a blue nylon umbrella. A mostly empty bottle of Closter liquor. 2 water flasks, one of which was partially melted. They were also found to contain water. A partially melted plastic cup. The outline of a rubber sole. Plastic remains of a bag or a purse. Wool from a sweater. A slightly burnt green woolen scarf. A wristwatch that was found under her body that was also burnt, and the hands were stopped at 12:32. A matchbox. Burnt food which may or may not have been bread or crackers, and a fur hat. Now, the fur hat was said to have the strong smell of accelerant believed to be petroleum. So far, that was the only trace of anything that could have been the catalyst for any type of fire. There was no container containing flammable liquids. There was no wood, kindling or charcoal at the scene. However, investigators did note that there was a container missing. See, the plastic cup that I mentioned earlier was the type of cup that sits on top of a thermos, yet the thermos itself was never found. Now, the type of thermos that cup belonged to back in the 70s was the type that would have been plastic with a glass lining inside. And yes, in the fire it could have melted away completely, although this seems very unlikely given the fact that there were several items that were actually plastic and were only partially melted. The other solution is that the killer took the thermos with them. So, like I said, the police first task was to try and identify this woman and then work out what happened. Was it a suicide? Was it an accident? Or was it a murder? An autopsy revealed that the person had died 6 days prior to being discovered. This information was corroborated by some eyewitness reports saying that on the 23rd, smoke was seen in the sky in that area around 12:05 PM. The cause of death was determined by the forensic examiner. This only gave rise to more questions though. So the official cause of death was listed as carbon monoxide poisoning, which you would definitely expect when it's a fire-related death, but also between 50 and 70 sleeping pills. Yep, that'll do it. The drug that was consumed was called phenomol and was often prescribed to people with sleeping disorders or those that suffered from anxiety. Back in the 1970s, this was a common drug in suicidal overdose cases. When prescribed, the recommended dose is between 30 and 320 milligrams per day. The pills that were found were 60 milligrams in strength, which means that she was somewhere around the 4,000 milligram mark. Again, the absolute maximum dosage that you can take in a 24-hour period is 320 milligrams, and she had around 4,200 milligrams in her system. As you can tell, this case is one of the strangest ones ever, and it's going to get even stranger. So let's take a look at the pills for a second. During the autopsy, it was discovered that 12 pills were still undigested in her stomach, which is a clear indication that these were only taken moments prior to her death. Now, due to the other 60 or so pills already having been digested into her system, that would mean that she had to have taken them at least 2 hours prior to her death. So, what? Did she take the pills at the hotel and then make her way to that location? Highly doubtful. Or maybe someone else was involved. It was discovered that although there are cable cars that go up and down this mountain, they were not open until later on that afternoon. There are roads that loop up and around the mountain also, but in order to get all the way down to the area where she was found, she would still need to leave the road and then negotiate through rough and treacherous terrain to get to her final resting place. If the aim was for her to take her own life, then why take enough pills to bring down an elephant and then set yourself on fire? I'm surprised she was even able to carry out any basic motor functions at this point after taking so many pills. To say that the police were puzzled by all of this kinda goes without saying, right? But 3 days after this gruesome discovery, they would get a break in the case. Inside the Bergen train station, like most train stations, contained storage lockers. These are coin-operated lockers, and in case you've never used one, you basically pay for a predetermined rental of time of this said locker. Once the rental time expires, then staff empty the locker and the contents are then placed into lost property. Inside one of the lockers, the station staff found 2 suitcases. These cases were put into the locker on the 23rd, just a few hours before the woman died. Inside one of the cases they found a pair of sunglasses which had a definite fingerprint on the lens. The cops were able to lift the print, no problem, and match it to that of the body that they found. Yeah, that was a massive clue. At least now they knew that this was in fact all of her stuff. So what else did they find inside these cases? Well, let's have a wee look. They found 500 German Deutschmarks, various pairs of shoes and boots, 2 bags from different shoe stores, various clothing items, a steel soup spoon with an engraving on it, a bottle of ladies' perfume, a package containing a clay-like substance, a scalpel, a map of southern Scandinavia, 3 detailed road maps of Norway which had notes written in pencil and several markings in pen that read 16/6. Various hats, one of which was in the Cossack style and was made from sheepskin. A woman's long-haired wig made in France, the colour of which was described as mahogany brown. Prescription cream used to treat eczema, which had all the identifying marks scraped off. Oh yeah, and all the clothing items that were found, you guessed it, all of the identifying tags had been removed also. Also found was 2 notebooks, one of which was totally blank besides some pictures stuffed inside. These pictures included a picture of the Madonna with child, a postcard of a religious scene, and a postcard of a horse-drawn sleigh. The second notebook, well, that one was definitely not blank, and further inspection would only make this case even more of a mystery. So when police opened the second notebook, they found that it contained several codes and tables with numbers. No one was able to work out what the codes meant. Experts failed to find any kind of repeating pattern, and there didn't seem to be a cipher anywhere in the notebook. In case, like me, you guys are not code breakers, a cipher is a few words or a phrase that can be used as a key of sorts to decipher a string of codes. Once you work out a section of code using this given cipher, the rest should fall into place. But like I said, there were no clues to any kind of cipher. It was passed to a specialist that worked in the Norwegian military, and he was able to determine that the codes could actually be a simple travel record. The first numbers are dates, the letter after the number is the month of travel, and the letters at the end would represent the city. So looking at this example, this would mean that from the 11th of March to the 16th, she was in a city whose letter began with L. With this possible information, combined with the findings in the suitcase, meant that the investigators could start piecing together her movements across a period of time. The shoe bags that were found in the suitcases were traced to Norway and Rome. Police were also able to track down a rough date when the woman would have been in the shoe shops, and were able to get a description of the Isdal woman from the staff. So remember, there were welly boots found at the scene, called sailor boots. These were purchased in one of these stores, and she was described as either American, French, Slavic. One witness even said that she was Asian. Witnesses also mentioned various hairstyles, and although one of the hairstyles matched the wig found in the suitcase, none of this was any help. She had very distinctive teeth though, which had several gold crowns, and she had a gap at the front. She was also described as tall and slim. So, using all the items found, the codes in the notebook and the descriptions given by witnesses, investigators were able to narrow down their search to 5 different hotels in Norway. They were also able to confirm this by matching her signature to the handwriting in the notebooks. Some of the information in the notebooks didn't match up with her actual movements in various cities, although rather than it being a diary of her travels, it would be fair to assume that it was an intended itinerary, which she more than likely deviated from, possibly staying longer in any given location, or leaving early for another. There were still elements in the coded entries that experts could not work out. This was mainly the letters that related to cities visited. Investigators found 9 different hotel registries and 4 travel forms, all with the same handwriting, matched to this mysterious woman. However, these were all completed using 10 different names. Each name was investigated using passport numbers and old addresses, and ultimately it was discovered that each of these names was entirely fictitious and made up. Whoever this unknown woman was, she went to great lengths to conceal her identity. The clothing with the labels cut off, strange codes and international movements over a short period of time, the fact that she had wigs and used various aliases would of course lead to some interesting theories as to who this woman really was. So let's get a wee look at some of these theories. Theory 1. She was a spy. No surprise there, that would have been my first go-to explanation straight away. This was during the time of the Cold War, and Norway was pretty close to the Soviet Union. Since the 1970s, several experts were consulted on this, one of whom stated that he didn't believe that she was a spy at all, and put forward a theory of his own, that it was a tin of hairspray that exploded and this caused the fire. Another guy by the name of Alexander Vasilyev also spoke about the case. He himself was an ex-KGB agent and is now a journalist. He says that back in the Cold War days, any Soviet spies would only have one or maybe two alternate identities. This was because it was easier to make up an entire backstory with supporting documents for one or two identities, not like the Isdal woman who had 10. Vasiliev also made the good point that spies, by their nature, are supposed to be secretive and inconspicuous, keeping themselves off the radar and not drawing attention to themselves. The Isdal woman certainly didn't do any of this. The investigators discovered that whilst she was staying at the hotels, she was exhibiting strange behaviour. It was reported that on various occasions that she would complain or make up some sort of excuse to switch hotel rooms. She would then rearrange all of the furniture in these rooms and in some cases remove the furniture completely. Some might argue though that if she was a spy, this could be because she suspected the rooms could be bugged. She spoke very little, if any, Norwegian, and often chose to speak English, French or German. In the 1960s and 70s, missiles were being developed in and around the Bergen area of Norway, so it was not uncommon for spies to be used there in order to try and gather some sort of intelligence. There was a witness that investigators spoke to that actually could corroborate this spy theory. Apparently, she was seen by a fisherman speaking to a naval officer near to where the missile testing site was. I mean, that could definitely lend credibility to her possibly being a spy, right? Maybe she was a courier, or maybe the naval officer was like a double agent, or maybe she was speaking to him for another reason. Which leads us on to theory number 2. She was a sex worker. It's thought that she could have been a high-end escort of sorts, and that the coded messages was an itinerary of jobs. This theory would also make sense. It was obviously illegal, and of course she wanted to, code her massive client list, as well as the wigs and the stuff. It all could point to that. There were also witness reports of her spending time with various men. Either the men would visit her in her room, or she would be seen dining with them and going out shopping in the company of a man. Theory number 3. The whole investigation is wrong, and the investigators were tracking different women. Now, this is definitely likely. Sometimes parallels are drawn between possible links that could be close to the subject. Maybe women that have similar looks and similar builds. Also the fact that the majority of eyewitnesses were actually describing different women. Theory number 4. It could be the work of a serial killer. See, 2 years after the discovery of the Isdal woman, Bergen was the location of yet another horrible discovery. In September of 1972, another woman, almost identical in physical appearance and age to that of the Isdal woman, was found murdered. Although this woman was quickly identified, her killer was never found and brought to justice. People have suggested that the killer may have been the same person, and in fact, there may be multiple female victims that have yet to be discovered. So there's a 5th theory, and to be honest, it's the one that I think is most likely. But that's only my personal opinion, and that is that the Isdal woman simply took her own life. It's thought that she may have had some sort of mental illness. It's possible that she had some form of schizophrenia, hence her strange paranoid behaviour. Remember, with it being the 70s, people with these types of conditions, they were not treated at the same level as they are today. Whoever she was, whether she was a spy, a sex worker, or if she suffered from a crippling mental illness, it's important to remember that she was a person. She was someone's daughter, granddaughter. Maybe she had siblings, or someone, somewhere in the world that is still looking. Whatever really happened that day on that mountain in Norway, I am not too hopeful that we'll ever get these answers. The only thing that we know for sure is that the poor woman perished tragically and in the most horrible way. During the autopsy, soot was found in her lungs, which means despite taking the pills that she did, she was still alive and breathing in the smoke from her own burning body. With each day, more and more internet detectives are coming up and finding more clues in cases. There are countless cases that have been solved by Reddit and YouTube. There are hundreds of YouTube videos covering this case alone, so who knows, maybe, just maybe, we'll get answers and hopefully give a loved one, a family member, or close friend the closure that they need. On the 5th of February in 1971, the Isdal woman was given a Catholic burial. This was primarily due to the fact that she used the names of saints in her hotel check-in forms. She was buried in an unmarked grave within the Mollendal graveyard, which is located in Bergen. The ceremony was attended by 16 members of the Bergen police force. She was buried in a zinc coffin to both preserve her remains and for ease of disinterment. Her ceremony was also photographed in case relatives came forward at a later date. So far, no one has come forward. That's it for this video, folks. I hope you enjoyed it, and I wish you all the very best for 2023. Please take care, be safe, tell someone that you love them, and remember, keep smiling.